Hello and welcome to the truth about quadruped locomotion. Animating four-legged creatures isn't easy, so here are some basics you need to know if you want to get your head around animating walks, trots and gallops. If animals walked on sticks, the lowest point in the walk would be the contact and the highest point the passing position. But compared to the legs, the body is quite heavy and wants to keep going down when contact with the ground is made. And that's what they call inertia. If the legs don't want to break under the weight of the body, they better learn to be bendy and take the impact, and that's just what they do with the help of knee and elbow joints. And there we have the basic pattern for any walk. Contact, low point, passing position, and high point. The front of an animal walks on its arms, so the main articulation joint is not the knee, but the elbow. The principle, however, is the same. The body keeps going down after contact is made, and overshoots up slightly after the legs pass each other. The smaller and therefore lighter the animal is, the smaller the delay and size of the down movement becomes, whereas in large animals like horses, it becomes quite noticeable. The rear end works like a human walk on tiptoes, with very long feet, but the basic mechanics remain the same. The reason why the mechanics for front and rear are so similar is because the joint between shoulder and upper arm mimics the function of the knee, the elbow mimics the heel, and the lower arm and hand act like the foot and toe bones at the back. So now we have two halves, but how do they go together? Now there are four basic options: the front and rear end in step, the rear end a quarter of a cycle delayed, half a cycle delayed, or 3/4 of a cycle delayed. Now which one is the correct one? Well, if you look at a dog walking, you realize that number 1 is out, and so too is number 3. Number 3 is interesting though, because it is used by the animal when breaking into a trot, that in-between thing between walk and run. But more about that later. That leaves us with a choice of either 2 or 4. And even though they both look convincing, the correct way to walk on 4 legs is number 4. The reason why it has to be version 4 becomes clear even without having film reference to hand. Let's look at the walks from above. With the front leg preceding the rear leg, the triangle formed by the contact points is extremely skinny and never really under the animal's center of gravity. In the correct version, the contact area is much larger and always supports the animal's weight. In version 2, a slow-moving dog would simply fall over, and I don't think evolution would have liked that. Because of these characteristics, the contact points of the front and the rear legs are extremely close together, and in some animals, the rear foot steps into the footprints of the front foot. This is of course dependent on the proportions of the animal. I only need to mention the dachshund. Because there is either a high or a low position 4 times in every cycle, and because the front and rear are a quarter cycle offset, the low and high points at the rear reverse, so the front is up when the rear is down, and vice versa. The head tends to echo the rear end. The keys for the cycle are front left contact, rear right passing, front right passing, rear right contact, front right contact, rear left passing, and front left passing, rear left contact. The breakdowns are then the 4 up and down positions. That makes 8 drawings in total, and with a cycle for a dog being about 24 frames, you now have the unenviable task of in-betweening on 3s. This brings us to the trot, or Trotsky as it's known in Russia. I'm joking. During a trot, front and rear end behave as if they are performing a relaxed jog. It's basically a run where both feet leave the ground for a short amount of time, that is when the high point is reached, and only ever one foot is on the ground, with the passing position being the lowest point. Front and rear are half a cycle offset, so that ground contact at both ends coincide. The tracks in the sands are similar to that of a walk, as the rear paws tend to come down close to where the front paws left off. Both front and rear reach their low and high points at the same time, with the head being slightly delayed to create a bit of an overlap. So the keys on the trot are mid-leap, front left forward, front right and rear left passing, mid-leap, front right forward, and front left and rear right passing. As the passing positions are also the low points and the leaps are the high points, this really just needs in-betweening. I tend to favor the up poses with my spacing to give the trot extra bounce. And finally the gallop. If one was to split a cycle up into 4 quarters, then the front ground contacts would be along the lines of left-right 3-4, left-right 3-4. The 3-4 indicating the amount of time the feet are off the ground. The back end would be 1-2 right-left, 1-2 right-left. Gallops are, however, not always that symmetrical. Depending on the animal, the contacts can be very close together, like with a rabbit, and the leap phase can be much longer, so this really requires looking at some reference. Let me talk a bit about the transfer of force in the animal. When the rear legs touch the ground, the dog is at its shortest, with a curved body acting as a spring of stored energy. Legs can only push, so the moment contact is made, the rear legs push the body forward. The animal makes most use of this moment by extending the body against the push of the legs, and so gains forward momentum. The front legs keep that momentum going, and the animal is now at its longest. When the front legs leave the ground, the animal is once again unpropelled. No force input can happen. The animal is now in flight. It utilizes this time by reloading its spring and bending its spine again, ready for the next push. So the force flows from the rear end to the front, and we can make that visible. By looking at what the spine does and tracing out its movement, we can see that it's a sine curve moving through the animal from back to front. This is the propagation of force. It moves through the animal faster than the animal itself moves. An analogy would be the rotation of a wheel, which at the top is twice the speed of the vehicle and is not moving at all where it touches the ground. The dog's feet are stationary when on the ground, but the wave traveling through the animal needs to be faster to allow the legs to overtake the body and get in front of it, and so get ready for the next push. As you can see, the tracks too are asymmetrical. It's quite hard to pick keys for a gallop, but if I had to, they would be front contact stretched, rear end overtaking, rear contact body compacted, and the forward push and stretching phase. A word of warning, not all animals have the same footfall pattern. Dogs tend to go left-right at the front and then right-left at the rear, whereas in horses it's right-left, both front and rear. Just look at some reference or borrow an animal from a friend. These moves can be used for all kinds of anatomies. Just experiment and have fun.